Good afternoon to everyone joining us live today. I'm Jason Marzek, Vice President of the Atlantic Council and Senior Director of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center. It's my great pleasure to welcome Guatemala's Minister of Economy, Gabriela García, to this virtual event, which itself is a continuation of our recent programming during IMF World Bank Week at the Atlantic Council. I actually should note this is actually the fourth time that we've had the pleasure of hosting Minister Garcia, who has joined us for a number of Guatemala-focused events, including most recently a private reception in our global headquarters in Washington to celebrate the future entry of Guatemalan avocados to the United States after nearly 2 decades of bilateral negotiation. That was quite an excellent reception. We're also very grateful to our partners at the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation, whose continued support and partnership has made this and many other events possible. And I will also note that the Executive Vice Chair of the Atlantic Council and founder of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center, Ms. Arsht, is with us today, listening into the conversation. So wonderful that she's able to join us as well. Minister Garcia, Guatemala has stood out in recent years for its macroeconomic stability, its prudent monetary and fiscal policy, its low debt to GDP ratio, and now inflation well within the central bank's target range. The country's resilience and its sound economic fundamentals must be strongly underscored. The economy grew by nearly 4%, 3.7% last year, projected to grow by over 4% this year, twice the regional average. However, as the IMF has pointed out, there's also a timely opportunity to implement critical structural reforms in areas such as infrastructure, governments, among others. And by strategically investing in these areas, Guatemala can help to ensure its continued growth and progress toward more sustainable and inclusive development. Today's conversation is a great opportunity to discuss not just the country's economic outlook, but also what the path to economic prosperity looks like so that we can dig deep into the administration's priorities to unlock Guatemala's full potential. Minister Garcia assumed the position of Minister of Economy in January 2024 when President Arevalo took office. She brought more than 25 years experience in economic development at the local and regional level to the position, including work at the international level to generate investment attraction. It's been quite a pleasure, Minister, to work with you, and I look forward to continued opportunities to do so. We'll have a chance for a question and answer, a conversation as part of this 30-minute event, but let me first turn over to the Minister to begin with some scene-setting comments. Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everybody. Always good to be here. And thank you, Adrienne, for the opportunity. Yes, we are very enthusiastic and optimistic about the future of the country, present and future, even under current commercial conditions that have been putting some different type of pressure on us. What I can say is that the efforts of President Arevalo to start investing in the so needed infrastructure for logistics, ports, airports, and roads are finally coming into implementation. It has been a year and a half of conversations, partnerships, especially with the US, and discussions, for example, with the World Bank, who for the first time, the Guatemalan government is using the World Bank group budget to loans for infrastructure investment. So I think that the country is opening itself for business, serious business, with the certainty of a government that is backing up not only democracy, but also legal certainty that whatever at least is done under current administration is not only going to be respected, but appreciated, and hopefully in the future continue to grow.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Minister. I want to cover macroeconomic outlook, FDI, key investment areas, and trade with the U.S., and we'll do all that in about 25 minutes here. But let me begin, Minister. As I mentioned earlier, and we'll get into in a moment your important comments on infrastructure, but as I mentioned earlier, Guatemala is forecast to double the regional growth rate with a projected 4.1% growth this year. What are some of the sectors that are currently driving this economic performance? And also, what would you like to share with the audience insofar as emerging industries or opportunities that the government sees as key to building on this growth in the years to come?
Sure. Yes, we have the lowest inflation in the last decade. We are expected to have a 1.7 inflation towards the end of the year, even with the current situation. And our growth expectancy is between 3.8 and 4.8. So we are very optimistic. And the resiliency of the macroeconomy is also impacting our view of the world and also how others see us. And with that, one of the key messages that this government is putting out there is the investment in infrastructure, not only the roads, as I mentioned, airports and railroads, but also the biggest investment in energy in the last at least 40 years. So we have two tenders out for transmission and distribution. We made the official announcement in New York a couple of weeks ago. So we are opening the country for business for very key investments that is basically saying to the investors, the government is backing you on this, because in the end, this is something that is going to benefit the population of Guatemala, yes, but at the same time open in terms of energy, the possibilities of other industries to grow. Energy is key. We are renewable energy country, is more than 50%. And after that, of course, we have manufacturing, light manufacturing, textile, and apparel is one of the key sectors that is still growing. And we are giving a strong push for electric and electronic. We are in a partnership with Taiwan for semiconductors and small car parts. That is taking force in the last few months. We are actively looking for investments from Taiwan in that particular sector. More than the cooperation that has been the norm, we want business from Taiwan to come here. So we foresee those two as being in the front line, or three: energy, apparel and textile, and the electric, electronic in the terms of car parts and semiconductors.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Mr. I want to actually pick up a point you were just referencing, is the strong partnership with Taiwan. I think that's especially important to put emphasis on, given all the news this week about the China CELAC summit and the credit line that was granted. Can you share a little bit about more kind of the importance of Taiwan as an economic ally and obviously a diplomatic ally to Guatemala, and how you see that economic relationship continuing to grow, which obviously is very complementary to the relationship with the United States as well?
Yes, well, the Guatemala president has been very clear on the strong partnership, friendship, alliance, diplomatic relations that we have with Taiwan. And part of that shift into what Taiwan has been more traditional in support to the country is that we had a formal commitment to promote education for engineers in Guatemala. There are currently a first cohort of engineers being trained in Taiwan for all this semiconductor new industry that we want to bring. And we also have group of people from the ministry, from foreign investing promotion, working with the companies in Taiwan, doing that perspective of, okay, with the engineers and us here having this task force to bring the companies here, how we can start and how the government can have some incentives, not fiscal, that we already have a fiscal system, but of young people, a good set of engineers and electrical engineers that we have found talent and that don't necessarily have the best opportunities for good jobs. So I think it's a win-win for them looking for a talent and for us having all this pool of people.
Yeah.
So
wonderful.
that
Thank
is
you so
one
much.
of the ways.
Thank you so much. You also mentioned infrastructure, infrastructure being a key area for development. You listed a couple different infrastructure priorities. We at the Atlantic Council have a lot of enthusiasm of how how to facilitate greater infrastructure development in Guatemala. Can you share a little bit more on some of the actions that the government, you mentioned the tenders in New York recently, but actions the government is taking or looking at taking to specifically expand access to some of the international finance that's so critical to help to address the infrastructure gaps, and also maybe some of the ways in which the U.S. is being is an important partner in that, but also institutions like the World Bank are so important for supporting such efforts.
Yes. Well, I'm gonna tell you that we had a quick conversation with the World Bank here to get me up to date about infrastructure and the financing mechanisms that we are using, which are activated after being dormant for so long. As I mentioned before, there is 250 million loan that has been approved by the World Bank to finance some infrastructure, but also we are working preparing 9 operations, 3 of which will focus on key infrastructure areas for 400 million for rural roads, 300 million for modernizing the airport system, and 3 million for supporting electricity transmission, which kind of partners with the tender that we have out there. That with the World Bank, but also with the government of the US, we have already a group of people here working specifically on the Pacific port. And we have railroad plans also with the help of the US and the Mexican government. So there are many pieces that are finally coming together after a year and a half of negotiating and figuring out the best ways to put it forward.
And what's your perspective? What's going to be the final key to unlocking some of those projects? There's been, as you mentioned, been a lot of great discussion, a lot of momentum, and what needs to happen next?
Well, we have something that is an advantage in terms of working with the US, and we have this government to government agreement that doesn't need to go through Congress. So by using that legal figure G to G, that has facilitated the work with the government of the US. That's why the Corps of Engineers is here. In terms of things that need to go to Congress is still something that is, you cannot predict what the behavior is going to be there. That's why we go to things like foreign direct investment, because that is a possibility of doing that without having to go to Congress. The energy tenders are key. That is going to be, if we want to diversify our economy, if we want to go into electronic component investment companies, we need to make sure that we have power, that we have energy. So that is key. And that doesn't necessarily need to go to Congress. So I think we have that alternate figure of private investors having a public-private partnership with us, where the government does what it needs to do, and the private comes and invests. And it's a business venture for them, secured by a government that is offering those credentials of certainty.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll move on to commerce with the United States. And earlier this month, you announced the government is already halfway through addressing the technical barriers to trade that have been identified by the United States. Given that over a third of Guatemala's exports go to the United States, this relationship and obviously the U.S. The imports that Guatemala has as well from the United States, that trade relationship is so fundamental. Could you share a little bit more about the progress that's been made so far on some of these technical barriers to trade, both what's been achieved and also what's still pending from your perspective?
Sure. Okay. Yes, the U.S. market is our main and most important destination market in terms of exports from certain goods. We cannot forget that we are also a positive partner for the U.S. We are the 7th economy as a partner buying from the U.S. We are number 7. We buy cotton, for example, and a lot of supplies to use as insumos. I forgot the name in English.
Kind of parts.
Inputs to transform. So I think that gives us a good option for negotiation because it affects directly also U.S. companies. That on one side, but for the non-tariff barriers that the USTR gave us as you have to figure this out before we can start some negotiations. We have 8 non-tariff barriers. We have addressed at least 5 of them almost thoroughly. It was a matter of updating some information because a lot of it has been done with the support of the US. Those structural changes that the USTR report is telling us that we need to work on has already been addressed by us with the support of the US in the last year and a half. So I think we are in a good position there. The biggest challenge is in terms of intellectual property, which means contraband or import of brands that are not legal, and the red tape, all that is excessive use of different forms for one process, one permit. So we are simplifying and moving into digitalization, which cannot be done unless you simplify the process, and the interconnectivity between ministers. So we have a task force working with the ministers, which is a first in at least since I can remember, of 4 ministries, the ministers and working with me and letting us go into their offices with the vice ministers to work on all the simplification and digitalization. This is something that we haven't seen in many years, and which means it reflects the trust that we have among the cabinet members, the importance that we're giving it to this, because it's facilitation of trade, commerce, and that is very technical. And also the private sector partnership that we have, agendas that we're working on. I believe that June and July are going to be key on these public-private visits to DC and other counties too, and other states for business to business, and with the backing of the government as support for the private sector, because it's in our interest that business flourish. So
Yeah.
That is what we see as a clear demonstration of what this government is doing, and to show the US and the possibility of the dialogue and negotiation to come to a better ending than the 10%. Diversification of markets too. We can't forget that.
That's great. A great point. I want to ask you about that, but let me just pick up on a point you made on the importance of simplifying the bureaucratic processes and red tape, which is fundamental. What does that look? What is that task? What are you expecting insofar as kind of timeline to be able to implement some of those ideas that will come about?
Yes, we started 5 weeks ago when the announcement was made, and we had the first meeting on the 8th of April with the private sector and with the instruction and the participation of the president. They delegated to the Ministry of Economy to coordinate these efforts. So since then until now, we have had, I know it's a number, but it's 49 meetings with the ministries, with the ministers, the vice ministers, and the technical people in charge of the process. So we have gone into the kitchen of the business. That's how we say it in la cocina del negocio. We go there, sit down with the teams, and we as team from the Ministry of Economy has been focused on that. So that's created a little bit of logistical issue for me because I have to use our human resource for that, but that's what we do. And we are optimistic that we can have within the next 2 months a facilitation, a window, one registration window, one-stop shop. I don't know how we're going to call it, but it has to have the backing at the highest level. That means a government decree by the president stating this is how it's going to be done. And then you have a clear way of doing that without and eliminating not only corruption, discretionary inputs. It's very simple when you understand the process. And by having the ministers on board, I think that makes the whole difference.
I want to, you mentioned the visit coming to the upcoming Washington visit. and also the importance of Guatemala as a trade partner, both on the export to the United States, but also the import of U.S. goods into
Yes.
Guatemala, right?
Yes.
We had a recent study as part of our America's Economy in Depth series. We found that Guatemala imported $544 US dollars worth of goods from the U.S. on a per capita basis last year. So pretty significant number.
Yes.
In light of this week's announcement, there's a high-level delegation that will travel to Washington in about 2 weeks to meet with USTR. What are some of the government's key priorities going into this visit, and what are some of the outcomes that you're hoping to secure to even further strengthen Guatemala's commercial relationship with the U.S.?
Sure. Well, the one thing is that we are coming with actions that have already been done. Some of the, as I said, of those 8 barriers are already addressed. So we are coming with a clear fact of, okay, we took care of this. We are taking care of this. This is what we have up to now, just having some results. And the proposal that we want to do is by having this time frame where we are setting ourselves into a deadline, right? Because that's the way that it's going to put pressure on everybody, that we are moving with all government force to facilitate commerce, not only exports, but imports. And that means customs, among other things. So we have the superintendent, this SAT superintendent, and the customs authorities working with us in that task force together with the other ministries. And this is a very comprehensive effort. The fact that per se, we think, sends a clear message. And what we hope to do is to start the dialogue, some of the private sector members have said that maybe we go product by product, depending on the weight of that product in terms of exports. Because for some of them, banana or coffee, the 10% can be a very important impact. And we need to evaluate the value chain. If they are affected to high degree, we have the risk of losing jobs. And we don't want that because that creates migration, right? So that's where we need to keep our businesses growing. We need to be able to have more US business come here with the legal certainty that they are going to have not only the talent for the workforce, but also to be able to export back, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense for them and to us. So we want to come out with at least an agreement for the next couple of months to have constant dialogue that eventually ends in a negotiation that hopefully can reach an agreement like what Canada or Mexico has, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, that it'll hopefully be a good time to be in Washington end of May. An important conversation that you're going to have. One of the things that we have, and you're aware of this, at the Atlantic Council, the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center, is our America's Economic Security Working Group. We're really focused on the importance of economic security, and specifically that means also it's economic opportunities for the United States, but also how to prioritize supply chain resilience, especially with growing interest in sourcing key inputs for U.S. business that are close to home. How is Guatemala, this dovetails with your conversation that you'll have in Washington in a couple of weeks, but how is Guatemala positioning itself to align with this broader global commercial shift and the priorities from the United States? And what role do you see the country playing and further contributing to U.S. economic security and also U.S. reindustrialization goals?
Right. Well, that's quite the question. Okay, so I think we understand where President Trump is coming from in terms of bringing back industries into the U.S. I understand it as a security issue in terms of jobs and growth for the U.S. However, we being positioned in this strategic location, it has to make sense for business. I think in the end, we are in a demand and supply process where both countries, the companies in both countries need to come together into the negotiation table. It's not just Guatemala, it's not US companies that depend on Guatemala transformation for sending back the goods. It's a joint effort. And that's what I see the potential of, after this visit, of identifying exactly where the supply chain is more at risk for any of them. We need to be aligned. This is not an isolated thing just for Guatemala, just for Mexico, just for Canada. It's an integration of this particular region. And you have to also evaluate the security concerns in terms of migration, security concerns in terms of war against drugs. And if we eliminate the possibility of economic growth in a sustainable way, good jobs in our countries, that's the same concept that the US, I think, is evaluating, and that's why it's doing this. So it has to be a consensus. It has to make sense for both countries, for companies in both countries.
That makes sense. We have about 3 minutes. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about avocados. Because you were with us in Washington the Friday before the Super Bowl. We weren't just predicting who's going to win the game, but we were also talking Guatemalan avocados, and it was great that the U.S. ambassador to Guatemala, Toby Bradley, was able to join us for that as well, who's worked a lot on this issue. Important after nearly 2 decades of negotiations, but how do you see the growth of the avocado industry? How do you see that as so important to both job creation, but also economic growth for both of our countries?
Yes, well, the biggest winner is of course, the guacamole, right? And the chips by having the avocados. We have 2 things that I would like to express today. One is that we have a new authority in the Ministry of Agriculture. The new minister took office last week, and we were discussing yesterday about this avocado thing, and she was mentioning that on the practical side, they are still finalizing the admissibility protocols for safety and security. So those negotiations are going on because we believe in the potential of this. She gave me, the minister, Maria Fernanda Rivera, gave me some information about how many hectares of avocados are being cultivating. 13,000 currently. So with a potential growth of 220,000 in the coming 3 to 4 years, understanding the amount of years that it takes for an avocado tree to actually be able to give you the avocado, which is 3 to 5, and is key for rural economic development. Because our avocado is such a high quality, the value added of having this type of investment in the rural community means new technologies, cleaner technologies. You have to be able to trace where that avocado is coming from and how it's being produced. Those are the standards that we're looking at, besides the fact that we have a good avocado. Is how you cultivate, how you produce it.
No.
So we are optimistic that this is going to be finalized this year. As I said, she's new. So I still have to meet with her regarding finding more details about those protocols that still need to be cleared.
Well, wonderful, Minister. In 30 minutes, you took us on a tour from infrastructure investments to growth projections, key industries, as well as the upcoming discussions in the U.S. on commerce, and of course, avocados too. So I want to again thank you. It's wonderful to have you join us today for this conversation. Again, thank World Bank International Finance Corporation for the partnership on all these events, and so wonderful that Adrienne Arsht could join us for this conversation.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Adrienne, for being here today.
Wonderful. Well, we'll look forward to the next opportunity, and to all of us, all those watching, enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Quiero que aunque el norte y sur azul sean distintos, lleven un mismo latido en el ritmo, como quien comparte el mismo apellido, porque al fin y al cabo somos latinos. Quiero que la unión que logra la fuerza rompa divisiones y abra más puertas. Quiero que entendamos que cuando todos sumamos se hace la diferencia. Diversos como hay palabras en el